mentioned England's Rugby Union Sevens people signing for York. Is that going to be the new thing? We're going to sign loads of England Rugby Union people as a sport.
Well, do you know what? I don't know whether it's not a big
because
crossover.
obviously the men can't sign Rugby Union players anymore because they have too much money in men's Rugby Union. But
yeah, and there's.
I don't know how much money's in women's Rugby Union or not. I don't know.
Nothing in sevens because they cut all the budget.
Oh,
Yeah, they cut. Yeah.
And obviously there's no money in women's Rugby League. We know that. So.
Yes.
Yeah, but you're paving the way for the people of the future. Don't forget they'll be standing on your shoulders or something.
I pay my own fuel to get to my games.
Yeah, but just think about how in the future you'll be able to think these girls getting paid, and that's because of my hard work in the past.
I'm not sure I'm that much of a pioneer in the game.
I think you are.
No, but, all the other people.
You know what I am setting up is that people are going to go, at least she's not as outspoken as that Danika Priim. You know, I've got somebody's back.
Well, it's only taken about 2 years for me to learn how to pronounce your name, so that's positive. 3 years. How do we get? We need to work out how to fill in one of these forms, right? To get some of these women pioneers who are not Danika to get an award from the Queen. Because obviously,
You or not me?
Well, you just said you're not as important as all these other people.
No, but I quite like a. I quite like some letters after my name. It's just it's like when you can pay, can't you, to be a doctor?
Yeah.
Rather than a Mrs. or a Miss.
Like those people, you can be like you can pay online to be like a vicar with some made up American.
Yeah, get ordained for somebody's wedding online.
So like, if we were going to do, because obviously it's the hot button topic now, because obviously everyone in Rugby League's got an award. So like Mutley, from Wacky Races, Danika's too young to remember.
I know Wacky Races.
But you always got
Dick Dastardly.
Penelope Pitstop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dick Dastardly, obviously the greatest.
Peter Perfect.
Yeah. Greatest motor racer of all time, Dick Dastardly. Very much inspiration from Michael
37 this
Schumacher
year.
in the 90s. Mutley used to always get a medal for being good. Like some people in the league have obviously got this weekend. Who should we be writing the forms for in the women's game to get nominated for their work? Obviously, because they're not going to get paid, so they might as well get a medal to get some letters after their name.
Andrea Dobson would be my top
She
number
was
one.
really good on the telly, I thought.
She's ace. She's just brilliant. She's honest. She's so knowledgeable about the game. She's a bit like the John Wilkin in the nicest, better way, in the sense that
She's got a coffee shop.
No, but I mean, like she can play multiple roles. She knows the game so well. She can see her vision for the game. Her analysis is great. She was the best captain I've ever had in my whole career. She has grafted from, being 16. She is currently the most capped player. She played 2 games for Great Britain, and then moved to England. So I don't even think her caps from Great Britain count. So she has more. She's still in the game. She's been working in the game. She is, Andy Dobson's up there.
Because obviously there isn't a women's Hall of Fame. I don't know if they separate it.
Isn't there going to be something for the World Cup?
Right, well, I don't know these things. So
I don't know if it's women.
Right.
I don't know if it's. I know there's a Hall of Fame. Because I remember when we were at Bradford and we went to the Lord Mayor's tea party when we won the treble. Yeah. And there was a woman. Oh, it's going to be really bad that I can't remember her name. There was a woman who said,
"There's always a woman.
You will be in the World Cup Hall of Fame when it comes round in 2021." But I don't know if there's yeah, but I don't know if. But it's
I think there's going to be heritage numbers if there aren't already.
We've all got heritage numbers. I've had mine recently tattooed on my ankle. Number 56. There's a lot of other things going on there. It's not a very big tattoo, but
yeah,
I'm only slightly traumatised because of that.
They didn't see it, so it's alright.
Oh, I'm not that flexible, so I'll take a picture and put it out later. No, but we've all got. So the girls.
Does that get cancelled? I don't know.
The girls play with their heritage numbers on their shirts now.
Brilliant. So
Whereas we didn't. That came in after the World Cup. I think Andy, Beth Sutcliffe, Emma Slow, Jodie, Emily, Lois, and people like that got the bronze or silver.
Because they've got
the amount of caps you got, and they now get that. So there were things that they came into play. And then after the World Cup, there's been heritage numbers. There's obviously been the caps. Everyone gets a cap now. We got our caps given to us after at Lee when it was the New Zealand Test series. So yeah, we are catching up. But yeah, Hall of Fame. Would you have current players in the Hall of Fame, or do you just have retired players?
Normally, you've got to have retired for a certain
So
amount of
Kirsty
time.
Maroney, Beth Sutcliffe, Andy Dobson,
It's a tricky one because
Jim
obviously,
Walsh.
and Phil will know more about this than I do, but the Men's Hall of Fame came along in 1988, so like long after the sport had been.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think
So
You got a fair few to go at.
yeah, and Neil Fox wasn't allowed until the year after because he didn't retire until 1979, despite pulling the world back on and not coming back.
But then you have people like Nat Harrowell, who we lost obviously
Good
at
point,
Christmas
good point.
because Featherstone have retired her shirt, which is I just think is brilliant, and they have her number on all of their playing shirts. She would have been in the World Cup. She would have been in the World Cup, and so would you have people like that in it as well? So yeah, there's plenty of names I could give to you.
As an awkward segue from that, because it's
It's never stopped us before.
no, because I pointed out this yesterday because they showed Warrington and Huddersfield. Huddersfield should either wear squad numbers with names on, or no team should wear them because it just looked untidy. They've got numbers on the back but no names. I need to know who they are
Well, again,
because Warrington have names on the back.
standards.
I did watch the game thinking,
If it's Super League, it should have Super League standards.
But then that is a finance thing, isn't it, for clubs?
but I do think that's the same for the Championship where you get players on loan who just wear 32 and no name and they should have the name on the back as
Not
well.
sure
But
that's
then-
a cost, though, really, is it? Put the name on
Well,
the
so
back
we
of
all
the
have a shirt now. We have our
shirt. Because
specific
you get a
shirts.
squad number, so it's not like you've got to change the shirt every week. It's
But then when you've got a team that are not consistent in the sense that we've got it's hard to get into leads, to say,
Obviously, yeah.
and therefore you earn that shirt so much that you don't want to leave, you don't want to leave. Whereas Huddersfield, who are relatively new, you've got, there's a girl, Oyen, who played her first Super League game for Huddersfield, who I begged to be in my Year 7 squad at school, and that's the reason she's into rugby. If I was her, and it's not because I think I'm so good, but she said her biggest fear is playing against me. What happens if that fear's so
I
great
think
that
that'll
she
be
just...
mine as well.
I mean, I'm not even that good, you know what I mean? I'm too nice. But they don't have a consistent rotation of players at the minute, and I don't know. I understand.
I'm speaking from aesthetics
If
rather
we're,
than
but also, if we're going to sell them as
practicalities.
potential stars,
Mhm.
we need to know who they are because
But it's Saints' first year having them on the back of their shirts.
Mark Wilson of this parish,
Currently in St Petersburg.
Who has been, can I just say, I think he's been phenomenal. And
He's
I
the
know
best
he's
in the
great.
business.
No, but I know he's great at his job. But he's we've had Sharon Chortle as well, who's been brilliant. But genuinely, one person who, whether he does his research, whether he's genuinely interested or not, you listen to him, and I love listening to him commentate the women's game, especially if there's not necessarily women. There's not been a woman alongside him yet. Just a little bit annoying. Leon was good. Leon Price was good, and he's had a few nice people. But somebody in the women's game who genuinely makes the game sound great. So I want to thank him. I think he's great.
well, it's because
He's great at his job anyway, isn't he? But,
Yeah.
He's the best.
But
one.
there is a shared passion for promoting the women's game.
Yeah. But it
He-
makes it difficult for him if you've got a team sheet, bits and pieces about people, and you haven't got anybody on the back of the names. But like I say, Huddersfield, I'm new to this, but Saints have only just had their spot on the back of their shirts.
Getting a team sheet sometimes.
Well, Mark,
Yeah.
Mark, who writes a column in a certain magazine that's out on Friday, sponsored by TalkSport, was at TalkSport Towers when the women's final was on, and he says in his column he went and had his lunch at a sports bar just at the bottom of where they broadcast from, and the women's game was on, and he said there were loads of people who wouldn't otherwise in any way whatsoever have ever come in contact with rugby league or women's rugby league, who were sitting there watching it, and he just sat there listening to their comments that were solely complimentary about what they were watching.
I'd love to do
Now
that stuff.
that's why you need names on the back, because if you're appealing to an unfamiliar audience, and they were, who's that just did that phenomenal piece of skill? Oh, it says Priim on the back of the
It was
shirt.
like that just got bashed. It was Rotherham.
Because I just got sent
But
off
if
again.
there is no name, it's harder to identify
Yeah.
and build up the personalities. I just think it's a
It's
minimum
difficult because I
requirement.
think, so for Bradford Bulls, having played there, the support from the club isn't that great, and therefore access to printing. So their shirts are made up of leftovers from the men.
But it should. What I'm saying is, the minimum standards should say you go out with
But
a
if-
squad name and a squad number.
But if we had minimum standards, we wouldn't have half the teams in the league.
It was
So there's a fine line, real fine line.
well.
Aesthetically, I'm all for
You
it.
might have answered. You might have said something there which needed to be said, but it was at the start of the season when we did our preview shows. It was interesting which clubs take this seriously and which ones don't, or which clubs bothered to reply to.
Yeah, we can go back and look at the politics of the whole Castleford and York with all the girls. York have offered some monetary, incentives. They've offered X, Y, and Z, and Cass can't physically offer that. Cass cannot compete, and since then, Castleford have stepped up and their training grounds improved. So it has put pressure on Castleford, but they don't physically have the money for the women's game at the minute, and it's much like Leeds, who you would say is probably one of the most, the richest clubs in the Super League in general. Anyway, we have been very, very lucky, and I will never, ever be able to thank Leeds for what they did for the women's game, whether they should have or not. At the time, there was no precedent set, but they did. They set the platform for the Women's Super League by kit, training ground, physios, nutritionists, psychology, just the club in general in terms of having buses to matches and not having to drive, or the team managers, the coaches, and Adam helped a lot with that because he was still playing for the men's time. But they set a platform, and in the first year we didn't have names on the back of our shirts. But the end of that season we got our heritage numbers, which then meant the season after we got squad numbers, which then meant, as that's gone through, Cass then got squad numbers, and then this year, it's taken a couple of years later for Saints to even get them. So, you've got to set a level, and the RFL can't go in and say you have to have this, and this, and this, because we just wouldn't have it. They just don't have it.
And I know this sounds daft, and I'm sure it was an oversight, but it took the Saints club Twitter 21 hours to reply to Faye Gaskin's tweet about her injury, and I thought
It took Saints.
they should have done
It
that.
took
a lot.
Saints generally. They've tweeted out the odd bits and pieces, but it took Saints until the Challenge Cup final to tweet out about the women on their Twitter page. They have done the
she's one of their
tidbits,
players,
but yeah, but they
as
have.
much as-
Again, that's what I say. It's very difficult for me because we have been so well supported by Leeds, and we have match days, or they retweet us, or they, and whatever.
Well, they've got
else.
a dedicated team for.
Yeah, and it's just different, isn't it? So, I thought Saints, the most active I've seen Saints about the women's game was because of the Challenge Cup, and Faye then also got loads of support from Saints players.
Yeah.
You look at the players who have commented on it, or have retweeted her, or messaged her, or.
I think it's difficult because I'm acutely aware that in terms of attendance figures and whatever, we probably over promote the women's game more in terms of talking about it on this programme than where the interest level is. So I know we are doing whatever we do. And some people have criticised us at times, not for that, but for not always being overly positive, which I don't think is fair, because I think one of the criticisms you can level at the coverage of women's football, certainly on TV, is there is no negativity allowed. There is never any criticism of players or coaches.
It's never anything negative about the actual game or the players or the teams, is it?
Yeah.
It's just the
And I think you have to
politics
have that,
or the
otherwise
administration of it all.
otherwise you are presenting a false image.
But then I
Players do
understand.
knock
Yeah,
on,
but,
players aren't perfect.
so I understand that the women's game is not for everybody. Absolutely not. And some people are like, you're not here to listen about the women's game and not. But if you support a team, so if you support St Helens, or if you support Wigan or Huddersfield or blah 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 blah, what you're supporting is that team, and whether they have a men's, a women's, or an academy or a wheelchair, surely this is gonna make me a very popular person. You support a team, and not a men's team, because I know there's a Leeds Rhinos fan, and he has been very active in Twitter saying he does not support, and he's changed his Twitter bio to Leeds Rhinos men and academies and I don't know if it says only, but it's very
Hashtag Leeds man in crisis.
yeah. So, but my view is, as a rugby league supporter for many, many years, not a women's rugby league supporter, just a rugby league supporter, I've supported Leeds Rhinos, and if I didn't play for them, I'd still want the women's team to do well, because that's my team. The badge is the badge, and who you play for, you know.
So tell us about Faye, because I have never ever seen. I mean, we were talking about Josh Griffin last week. I've never seen a player have to go through what he went through. I've seen people do injuries, but never to the point where the excruciating pain is such that nothing else matters. But Faye's was just like the most unfortunate injury ever, because she was literally jumping for joy.
Yeah. And that picture will not get out of my mind. I can't get it out of my mind.
Because you know her as well as anybody.
Yeah, really well.
Roomed with her and on tour with her. And...
I first played rugby league when I was at university as England students, and I referred to Faye as Forrest Gump and Jenny. We were Forrest and Jenny, and that's back in 2011, 12, maybe. Yeah, significantly long enough ago to. We were Forrest and Jenny. She was the leader of the pack. She was the captain. She's been the half. She's the greatest half in the women's game. She's the greatest kicker in the women's game in England at the minute. I wasn't in the England squad far enough, but we won't mention that. But she's hardworking. She is great at her job. She's so hard on herself, and she obviously Saints didn't start particularly well in the final. She recognised, put on her face pass, and celebrated her try assist, jumped, landed, and the picture is of her leg, and it just looks like a bow. Why that was even allowed to be tweeted out, I've got PTSD.
Don't talk about people that have focused on...
I've got PTSD from the injuries. And obviously she went down, and within half an hour she was back out with a full leg brace on, and the outcome is not fantastic, and there's lots of complications in it, and it's just bloody awful because she's out for the season.
And the World Cup hopes have gone.
She wasn't in the England squad. She hadn't been selected for that.
She would have been.
She told us that last year on the show.
I can't just keep talking about Faye, not that. But
it's not an age discrimination.
No, it's not. It's not. Politics. But it's madness, isn't it? It's not all rainbows and unicorns. No, but a really nasty injury in a really unfortunate time for her in the game, and a really unfortunate for Saints to lose such a pivotal. You know, it's good for Beth Stott, because Beth Stott is always in Faye's shadow. So Beth is a very, very good half, and now is going to have to step up with Jodie. But yeah, she's got a long road to recovery. The thing that I want to, I have to question myself sometimes. So Josh Griffin.
Just questioning you.
So Josh Griffin, you might not.
You can do a podcast on yourself, can't you?
No, so Josh Griffin has a really nasty injury. Everybody sees it. Everyone hears about it. There's lots of varied opinions about it. He goes back to his club. He gets scanned. He gets operated on. Saturday morning, Faye does, a mere few hours earlier, if not even a few hours, was it? Faye does a similarly nasty injury in the fact that she's snapped and fractured and blah, 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 blah. She has paid for her own MRI scan. She will now await the outcome and what the actual thing is. She will either then go back through NHS and wait for the thing, or she will have to fork out however many thousands of pounds it is to pay for her own operation. Now these are, isn't it contradictory of me to say, St Helens and Hull FC, it's a team. It doesn't matter whether it's men's or women's, but where's that fine line? In the women's game, so Danny Anderson, greatest prop in the game, your favourite player.
Second.
She was really lucky in the sense she wasn't at all. Her operation is by one of our other girls, Addie. She's having her ACL done today. Bless her. Danny snapped her ACL in England training. So it wasn't even club, it was England international training. She snapped her ACL. She waited 5 weeks for her MRI scan, and the only reason she got it sooner because she kept on ringing Pinderfield asking for a last minute, and she rang one day and they was like, yeah, we've got one this afternoon. She then pestered, and if you knew Danny Anderson, she doesn't pester anybody. She's quiet, she's meek and mild, and she just does what she needs to do.
The assassin.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's only through word. I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, but then she rings up about the MRI scan and keeps pecking about because they're like, oh, it'll be 2 to 3 weeks for your results, which is NHS protocol. She then, somebody at England gets hold of this. Some doctor speaks to some doctor, and then the next thing you know, they're speaking to the doctor from Hull for her, who's then managed to get her in sooner. And she's had her operation. Is it 8 to 9 weeks after snapping her ACL? Which by 8 to 9 weeks post ACL, you're looking at, you're 2 weeks off back running, 3 weeks off back running. But she's not even had her op yet. So, again, it's a focus on the women's game. But where's the fine line between the medical attention then from the men's and the women's game? We have insurance if you decide to take it out yourself. So I pay however many pounds a month for a couple of insurance policies that cover different things. But what Paul, like Faye and Danny both essentially funding / waiting for their own operations. I know that's really long-winded and boring for some of you.
No, and I think it again highlights the fact that if we're going to take it seriously and call it elite.
But Danny did hers at an England international session.
Then there needs to be the backup of the kind of support a male player would have if they'd been injured playing for their country or training for their country. And clearly clubs would not release players if they didn't have those insurances in place.
Yeah, it's just a fine line between, if you can get a scan for Josh Griffin, can you get a scan for Faye Gaskin?